Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome now to our top story. Now, while some of us embrace the intention of the APC-led government to probe every corner, everyone, some people are very afraid of the limitation. I'm actually being very careful not to say the selection, because some people believe it's not a selective probe. But then again, what do you think about the probe as it cuts across the previous government alone? Joining us to discuss this is a public affairs analyst, Mr. Duke Oputa. It's always good to have you with us.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Morning.
Now, with credibility as the key word for me, what does it say to you, with this limitation to have the probe just on the previous government? Of course, it's a PDP-led government.
Well, first of all, it's not really that clear that the president intends to limit the probe. It's not that clear. However, the word that's coming out of his camp, i.e. his aides and his associates are advisors that he intends to limit it. But let's go back one step. During his campaign in Kaduna in March, he did say that he was going to forgive, in quotes, all transgressors up to his inauguration date on the 29th of May. So that was one statement that he made during his campaign. And yesterday as well, I believe I saw a list of 7 academics that he brought into a committee to advise him on how to deal with the corruption. So one asks the question, if he's actually just constituted the committee, could he have then made a decision before the committee had a chance to advise him on the way forward? So my take on it is that here is the first unrambling of the difficulties that the president is going to have in trying to deal with corruption. Because ultimately, the bottom line is that if he does decide to treat corruption the way Nigerians expect him to treat corruption, he would have to probe his own associates as well. He's going to have to probe absolutely everybody, including himself. And that means, of course, that it's going to be very, very difficult for him to continue, because these are the people that have actually put him in power, bankrolled him into power, and continue to support him in power. So my take on it is that what we're seeing here is jostling and politicking, and at the end of the day, I'll be very, very surprised if the outcome is actually a probe on Jonathan only.
But did we miss something? Because if, as Buhari was running, he was, as well as saying that he would, there would be an element of forgiveness, he was hard-hitting when it came to fighting corruption. Now, how can corruption be fought if not, we can't only look at, is it possible to just look at, now that he's in his administration, he'll be looking into anything that might be deemed corrupt, but some things predate his administration. Is it possible to fight corruption without looking into what happened before he came into power?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, again, Balarabe Musa, former Kaduna governor, did say that he cannot see any reason why Buhari should not be probing from 1999, when, in his words, this nonsense all started. Corruption and impunity and wanton waste of public funds. So my view is very, very clear.
That's still limited to the PDP,
Well,
yeah, 16 years.
16 years. But my take is this. I mean, at the end of the day, Buhari has run for presidency three times. Yeah, on the 4th occasion, he got through. And every single time he ran on the same ticket, anti-corruption ticket. So if he had won the election in 2003, who would he have probed? And let's look into why these statements are coming out. Why have they said they will limit it to Jonathan's administration? Very simple. The only credible reason they're giving is lack of time. It's going to be distracting for the government to be going beyond the last 8 years. But in truth, in saying that, they are also preempting what they're going to find, because they don't know how long a probe is going to last. Even probing Jonathan's government alone could last the next 20 years. But it could also last 5 days. I mean, if it's so obvious, you don't need to find everything that is wrong with a probe in order to come out with an outcome. If you find one thing that is wrong, it is sufficient to say something has gone wrong there. The rest of it can follow, but you can indict on that one single thing. And it's not difficult to find one thing that is wrong with absolutely any government in this country. So the Jonathan probe could last a week. And if that ends after 1 week, would it then come back and say, oh, actually, we have time now. We can go back and probe others. So in short, my position is simple. The presidency should not be making any statements about limitations, about what they're going to scope, about anything until they start. What they should be concentrating on is saying, we are going to probe every corruptible situation that we can identify. It doesn't matter how long it goes. As far as I'm concerned, the probe should start from the day we got independence. In terms of IA, we should be addressing every single issue. I've had additional, that's his name, isn't it?
Yes.
I've had him say things like the Jonathan corruption is glaring and obvious. I mean, let's come into Lagos, and I can give you this. Let's go into Lekki, let's go into Banana Island, let's go into Osborne Estate, and let's look at all those 1 billion naira houses. Let every one of them come out and tell us what they did to make that money. So in other words, corruption is glaring everywhere. It's not just Jonathan's corruption, everybody's corruption. Governors as well, and even that is far more important.
Let me jump in here before we go to the governors, and then before we touch upon the Amechi highlight that has been in the news, and the likes of Senator Balamet Tinubu. Let me ask you. Let me take you back. You mentioned that there is no clarity. I'm going to ask this. Are we saying that Femi Adesina speaks for himself? If there truly is no clarity, you're saying that, it's not clear that he's going to limit the probe to the Jonathan administration, the previous administration, because that's exactly all we have been hearing from Femi Adesina, who is the special advisor. Because my tilt is this: if there is no clarity, it was reported yesterday that there was an official startup of the probe to the GEJ administration.
Well, reported, like I said, Buhari has not addressed the nation himself on that issue.
Should he?
Absolutely. He is the president. He is the one that we voted for. And bear in mind, he hasn't appointed ministers either. So he's been advised by people who have not been elected or vetted by the Senate.
But one thing you just mentioned is who we elected. That's who Nigerians picked to be president, who has run how many times with a ticket saying that he will fight corruption. Is it feasible to think that that he can fight corruption without looking at things that are glaring in your face? We picked up our newspaper today. We were seeing that over $1 billion perhaps diverted from railway projects. There are things that seem, it's in your face. Why would it not be looked at? Is it feasible to think he should look at go beyond the past administration, where it could also come into a question of honesty? If Buhari said, you wanted me to fight corruption, I'm fighting corruption, but we didn't know in what way he would be or what administration he would be looking into, should we just be happy, since we wanted corruption to be fought, that corruption will be fought?
Well, there are two things. You have to be circumspect. You got to think in this way. Two things. We want to fight corruption because we want to clean up the country. We want a new direction.
And we want to get funds back if possible.
Absolutely. And if that is the case, then it is important that every aspect of corruption in this country, as far as we can go back, should be looked into. What we do about it is a totally different matter altogether. We may well decide that, okay, that is what happened here, but now we're going to have an amnesty overall and create a situation for that amnesty. Because the truth of the matter is that it is very, very difficult to fight corruption, in a forceful way, essentially because almost everybody is corrupt. I said, and this is the truth, almost everybody is corrupt. I remember over the last 1 year, I've been in some states' houses of assembly, let me mention some, and I've seen speakers and people like that with suitcases of money right next to them, bringing it out and going, here's 100,000, here's $500,000. Where did that money come from? This is happening, and it's happening as we speak right now. It is happening. If Buhari doubts me, let him go out and engage some mystery shoppers. Yeah?
So Duke, let me ask you to please pause so we can go for a news break. I like where this is headed. But then we shall also be touching upon EFCC. Now, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has come under fire for so many things, and I'm sure you want to know what we have to ask Mr. Duke Oputa. Our public affairs analyst is still going to be with us. Position your questions and send them through to facebook.com/GMNS School TV. You can tweet them at GMNS School TV. We're headed to the news center where Victor Orororo is standing by. Have you been asking your questions? Because we'll be looking through our Facebook page. It is facebook.com/GMNS School TV. You can send them as tweets at GMNS School TV. And our topic, we're looking at the anti-corruption battle, of course, by the APC-led government. But then my guest has put in a twist. He says The president did pledge in March in Kaduna that he wouldn't go after previous governments. So what has the Economic Financial Crimes Commission been doing all this while? Now, welcoming back to the studio on this discussion is our guest, Public Affairs Analyst, Mr. Duke Oputa. Thank you for staying.
Thank you.
Off the air, we've been hush-hush over EFCC. Now, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, if you didn't know, was set up in 2003 following the pressure of money laundering and so on and so forth. And for them, they are to prevent, investigate, and prosecute, as well as penalize these perpetrators of these crimes. Now, my question is, what directive have they been acting upon? Because, I mean, I'm to play up two cards now. Have they been asleep, in the past maybe 16 years? Because they've been going on headlong like who let the dogs out. Like, they've been probing, they've been acting on some petitions. What has been happening? I mean, going back the record you put out here that they don't have any directive yet by the president.
Well, I wouldn't have thought so. First of all, I mean, you did point out they were set up in 2003 for a purpose. And that purpose has not gone away. It does not require a presidential fiat, a presidential direction for a law enforcement agency to actually go out and do their job. Their job is defined by the statute that sets them up, which means that they should be pursuing criminal, corrupt Nigerians, not just political officials, but criminal, corrupt Nigerians everywhere they can find them. If an EFCC man is walking past and sees a guy that he happens to know doesn't have a job, driving around a Rolls Royce, he should click in his head. There's something wrong here.
So he doesn't need to wait. They don't need to wait
for the president to do it.
They can go ahead and do so.
Absolutely. It is their job to investigate, and they should be investigating irrespective of what the president wants. It's not the president that decides who gets probed. It's not his job.
Please, can you also clarify something? I like what Anna said. She said you don't need to wait because there's been this whole hush and storm about you have to submit a petition because, I mean, bringing in the Amechi and Tinubu saga into this, they are requesting that if PDP has a grouse, they should actually submit a petition with evidence against this too.
Well, if there's a petition and evidence, then it doesn't need to go to the EFCC. It can go straight to the police. Can't it? We have a police force that prosecutes crime. So if you have evidence of crime and everything is there, you just go to the police and look, there's a criminal, prosecute him. We don't need the FCC.
We are getting to see where Buhari's focus will be, which will not change where the EFCC will look or can look into as they've always been able to since they were set up.
They have to concentrate on the reason they were set up, which is to fight corruption in the country. And let me give you an example. We have issues at the moment about salary payments in the states. Now, I was looking through, state allocations a couple of days ago, and it struck me that states like Kwara State, for instance, don't owe any salaries, I understand, or Gombe, for instance, they owe no salaries. River State does. And yet River State gets maybe 5 or 6 times as much money as Gombe State. I'm talking about an average 15 to 20 billion naira a month allocation to River State, an average of 3 billion to Gombe State. And yet Gombe is able to pay every civil servant out of 3 billion, and Rivers cannot pay out of 20 billion. Doesn't that give you... Absolutely, it calls for a probe instantly. You don't even have... What are you waiting for the president for? That is your job. So the key thing here is, like I said earlier, I think all of this thing is politicking. It boils down to the fact that they still don't take us Nigerians seriously. It's all about party politics. APC government berated Jonathan and PDP for 8 years. Well, and the previous Jonathan Yaradua for lack of performance, for inefficiency, for corruption, and so on and so forth. Now they are in power. Will they now toe the line and do the right thing? They are not doing that.
Do you think, in Lai Mohammed, his words, he said that it's fast emerging that PDP has the worst governance in the history of our country, which are strong words. If you're a party that comes into power, would you not be surprised to see APC turn a blind eye to what they cast as blatant corruption? Because I personally I'm not surprised that the past administration is being looked into. And because we've had a series of, we had an exodus, one party to come into another party, people are unsure of who the PDP or who the APC are with how many people have defected. Is it not obvious that in time, even if Buhari feels his attention is going to be on Jonathan's administration, if the APC, there are members that were involved in corruption, isn't it just a matter of time that it's inevitable, their names will also come up as well?
Well, absolutely. And this is what I believe is happening within the party, in the sense that the hierarchy of the party are beginning to recognize that if Buhari does carry out his intention,
they'll go down as well.
It's as simple as that. And so what I see is two factions in the party. I'm not an insider, but the indications are that there are two factions in the party. One faction that wants to probe and correct everything that is wrong in this country, and one faction that's saying, well, it's not going to be that simple. Let's just limit it to what we can manage. But what we can manage means leave us out of it, let's deal with everybody else. Now, it's not going to work for Nigerians. But the key thing is, I personally, I won't lie to you, I believe in Buhari's intent.
Anti-corruption.
There's no doubt about his intent. He's fought for this position for 16 years. When he was a military ruler, he was anti-corruption. He brought in what was called the war? No, wasn't the war against it? It was something like
war against discipline.
Yeah, why?
Yes,
why?
Yes. And they're asking for it back.
Absolutely, he brought it in. So there's no doubt that the man has an intention to fight corruption.
That's the agenda. That
agenda is very, very clear. But the key thing is this: remember, stealing has very little to do with volumes. So in other words, if you steal 1 kobo, you are as culpable as if you steal 1 billion.
Really? When we're looking for money?
No, that's a different matter altogether. If you're looking for money, go and tax Nigerians who have not paid taxes. But if you are looking to correct the corruption in this country,
I think it's twofold, is it not?
To an extent, I mean, actually convicting or indicting particular corrupt officials isn't necessarily going to return the money. Necessarily, it might not. If you want to return the money, you don't need to indict them to return the money. You can simply. Absolutely. Look, the tax laws are sufficient, basically. Because if I would like this government, let me tell you what I'd like Buhari to do. I'd like him to order the finance minister to release a figure of the highest taxpayer in Nigeria. The one person that paid the most tax as an individual income. Because if that person didn't pay 1 billion naira in tax, or in the last 10 years, then it's absolute rubbish because they've got 10 billion in assets. And there's so many of them like that. So if you're looking for money, he has two options. He can change the currency, bring enough cash out there and tax them. Remove 40% of them and put it
I have to take you back. We're wrapping up, but let me ask this. So what has EFCC been doing? Have they been playing to the gallery? Because we've been saying this, and PDP and other sources have been calling this a witch hunt because they've selectively coined out some people to probe. If there is no directive, you've defended them saying that's their job anyways. They should do this every day. So what have they been doing? Are we to support the sources that say that this has been a witch hunt trend?
There is no evidence of a witch hunt yet, in truth. If only PDP ex-governors are being probed at the moment, it is possible that it's coincidence. I'm not going to sit down here and say they've sat down and said we're not going to probe that, we're not going to probe. But nevertheless, what we're saying that there should be no statements limiting that scope, so that when you've convicted or indicted in Yako, we can then start to look at somebody else. Can go and say, Fashola, how did you do?
The website.
Absolutely. Not just the website, but everything else. There's a lot of projects in Lagos that have not been handled. Lagos is raising so much money and yet so little is being done. So at the end of the day, we can say, Fashola, how did you fare? Give us an account of what you did. That will come, but the EFCC have to be prepared to act despite the presidency, despite the APC, because they were not set up by the APC.
So in your opinion, sir, would you say that the Buhari administration should go way back? Because there's a write-up in front of me that says that the reason why the president is having maybe cold feet is because of his allegiance now and relationship with former President Olusegun Obasanjo. They seem to be very close. Is that maybe why there's this resistance
it's
going way back?
It's not just Obasanjo. The presidency has a constituency that is very tricky. There's the military as well. Most of the looting in this country was done by soldiers. We all know that. We've got ex-generals who own oil blocks. These are guys that earn less than £1 million in their entire career, and yet they own assets worth billions. We have ex-generals who are actually in Forbes' list. Ex-generals in Forbes' list. How did they get there in the first instance? But this is a constituency that he will have difficulty probing.
So let Buhari, let him probe, but
should he probe
not
way back?
Limit.
No, he should probe absolutely every probable position.
Right.
So if you can find corruption, you should probe it.
Thank
Simple
you
as that.
so much, Mr. Duke. Like I
you.
said, it's always a pleasure having you sit on the hot seat and give us your 2 pence on everything we discussed. Thank you so much for coming.
It's my
All right,
pleasure.
ladies and gentlemen, the conversation continues on facebook.com/GMNScooty. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, it will be time for entertainment. I know my hair's down, our hair's down, but we'll let it down some more. Your hair isn't down. Do stay with us. We'll be right back.
I'll bring the wig along.
So, did you like what you just saw? I know you did. It's very simple. If you want to see more, just subscribe to our channel right now.